I don't like what they've done, but by trying to broaden the appeal, they've only pushed away the core that is huge. Like Star Wars has a core audience that's millions of people. If you're turning off half of them, that's a lot of people to not come back.
They have a new series coming out called The Acolyte. Now, I'll tell you what, you guys are the experts on this. Why don't you, before we get into the story itself, give everybody a quick rundown of what The Acolyte is, because it's like a Star Wars origin story, right?
Well, you got to take it back real quick. 2 or 3, maybe even 4 years ago, Star Wars launched a new multimedia initiative called the High Republic, which is an era of Star Wars set maybe 100 years before the Phantom Menace. Maybe it's 300 years, but it's kind of like the Harry Potter Hogwarts Legacy, where it's something before what we recognize. And briefly, no one has liked those books. The books don't really sell well. The comic books don't sell well. The stuff based on that era of Star Wars isn't successful, and this show is coming from that. So, Rhino, what did you think, man, when you heard this announcement that they're making a show in the world of the High Republic?
Well, see, the biggest thing for me, and it always has been, has always really come down to the lore, the canon, and the continuity of all of those things, and the continuity of characters moving through their time periods. All of that stuff is very, very important when it comes to something like Star Wars. In this sci-fi fantasy genre, you could say, those things are so important, especially when you've got a lot of fans out there that's what they love about it, is the connections between these things and how they match up and all of that. My biggest thing with The Acolyte is the fact that we're going to an era where Plagueis is supposed to probably be a thing. Darth Tenebris, his master, is supposed to most likely be a thing. And yet, you know, we get these constant shifts from dialogue that we've heard before. You know, the Sith have been extinct for a millennia. All of these lines that you hear out there, it's kind of like with the Obi-Wan Kenobi rematch of the century. You know, the circle is now complete. When I left you, I was but the learner. Now I am the master. Like, it's kind of stuffs around with those lines there, and the connections just start to fall apart. Yeah. Now, could they do a story where 100 years in the past and make a good story out of it? Well, yeah, I guess they could, but with the majority, if not for me, it's pretty much all of everything that they've come out with on Disney Plus. Yep. Has been absolutely garbage. What sort of hope could we give this thing? And then you pile on top of that, sorry, Jeff, and then you pile on top of that with the Leslie Headland and the putting her queer identity into this. And then you've got the people, the actors that are in it at Star Wars Celebration last year going, it's a strong female character. Yes, yes. You know, Star Wars has always been about the patriarchy. You know, like this is how it's been promoted. Yep. And what are we supposed to think about that, especially with where we are now in the society and the culture? It's not for you, because male Star Wars fans are sexist, according to Kathleen Kennedy. And I got a video about 2 hours from now that I'll drop about that. That is why I personally don't expect this. I'm sorry, what did you say, Craig?
I said, what a great transition to the story. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, it's garbage, and now we're here. So let's talk about that.
All right. So the creator of the show, Leslie Headland, said, I know how frustrating some Star Wars storytelling in the past has been. I stand by my empathy for fans, but I want to be clear. Anyone who engages in bigotry, racism, or hate speech, I don't consider a fan.
Okay, see,
she's a gatekeeper.
But I also see this as the same thing that they did with the Reva character, Moses Ingram, for the Obi-Wan Kenobi show. They're getting out in front of this because they know it's going to be a disaster, and they're basically already starting to point the finger. It's you guys out there, you guys that are saying that this character doesn't make any sense. I mean, if I can, sorry, just spurg out a little bit here, Reva as a character had the worst motivations moving forward as a character, and our understanding of what she knows, and being that Anakin or Vader is Anakin, all of that sort of stuff, it was so jarring and so out of place that's what most people were criticizing. Not the fact that she was a woman, not the fact that she was black. I will say she can't act for shit, or at least the director that directed her very, very poorly, because all she's doing is screaming is acting. But at the end of the day, it was a shit character, and people voiced that. But yet, we're the racist ones. We had Ewan McGregor sitting in his car going, "Oh, if you're one of these people, you're no Star Wars fan in my eyes." Guys, if anybody in these studios listen to this, you need to stop doing that.
Thank you. Because this is the only way they can get people to talk about their show. That's the problem that nobody addresses, that the media has created. Because I get it, folks. I know how the cycle works. You need to have promotion for something before it comes out, during, and after, when it goes to home media or streaming or whatever. What Disney Star Wars has done ever since after The Force Awakens, they have been jumping out in front of these problems. But what they do is they turn off people from watching them. And then when people don't watch them based on what they say about these shows, like this quote from Leslie Headland, they don't watch it, the show fails, and they react, and they put this out ahead of the curve. You know, you said about Reva, everybody wanted to praise Reva. Everyone wanted to put her on this platform and this pedestal and say, yes, queen. Well, guess what? Where Reva lives right now is Ollie's. That figure is one of the most present figures at Ollie's right now. If you don't live in America, Ollie's is a discount chain. Good stuff, cheap is their slogan. I say good is subjective because most of their toys that do not sell are Disney, Star Wars, sequel, and era stuff like that. Yep. Holdo, Reva, Zori Bliss, Jyn Erso, and Rey are everywhere. You will find the Emperor because he's part of a series that hasn't sold, but overall, this political whatever they want to put into Star Wars just makes Star Wars go to the clearance aisle. And they tried to crowdfund a Reva lightsaber 2 years ago during the show. Mm-hmm. First Star Wars crowdfunder to die. Next one after that didn't go as well. It didn't go as planned at all, excuse me, and died as well. They have poisoned this brand, and they keep using negativity and garbage to try to goad fans into talk and yell and fight. And fans have reached a point where they just don't care, and no one's going to watch this show based on this. We'll all grow and do our own thing talking about it, but no one's going to actually watch the show.
As Kathleen Kennedy came in, says, my belief is that storytelling does need to be representative of all people. That's an easy decision for me. Then she followed up with operating within these giant franchises now with social media, and the level of expectation is terrifying. Okay. I think that's a fairly vanilla statement that I think most people can agree with. Anytime you're dealing with a major franchise, like if you step into that, I think most people would agree that there's a lot of expectations associated with that. And with social media, you're going to hear that if you're on social media at all. But she continues, says, I think Leslie has struggled a little bit with it. I think a lot of the women who step into Star Wars struggle with this a bit more because of the fan base being so male dominated. They sometimes get attacked in ways that can be quite personal.
Oh, you mean like all fans are racist, bigoted, homophobic people? That sounds like a pretty targeted personal attack to me. I mean, George Lucas, I may have not liked episode 1, but I never heard him go out and say, oh, you don't like Jar Jar? You don't like X amount of people or X people. All he said is he may have been too broad, or, oh man, well, you know, he's integral to the character. Say what you will about George Lucas. There was some humility that came with it. And though I didn't like a lot of his stuff, I still kept going back because I didn't feel like I was disrespected or treated lesser than for not liking something. From Disney, if you don't think their way, you are X, Y, and Z. And I find it funny when I'm called racist because, like, what am I racist towards? I like everybody. Yeah. But they keep doing this, and this has been like 7 years at this point. This isn't new from Star Wars at all.
But this is the other thing too, Jeff. You just mentioned episode 1, Star Wars: The Phantom Menace, or The Phantom Menace. You didn't like that movie? You thought it wasn't really that good?
I was 10 years old when it came out, and I was a huge Star Wars fan before it came out. I saw it. I didn't really like Star Wars again until Rogue Squadron came out in 2001. Like, I don't say it to sound like I'm a contrarian or cool, but as a child, I thought those movies always kind of sucked. It wasn't until the third one came out that I was like, yeah, prequels are okay. And then the Clone Wars show hit, and then I was like, oh, I get the whole world. And now I'm on board with everything. But it took me almost 10 years to like it.
Despite how you felt about that, did you still always think that that's just the story and it's a part of the canon?
I'm sorry, what is part of the story?
With the prequels.
Oh,
so
yeah.
For whatever unenjoyment that you got, or disenjoyment, however you say it, you got from those, maybe the first 2, do you still consider those, and did you always still consider those to be a part of the canon and a part of the continuity?
Because George Lucas never dumped on Han Solo and Chewbacca, I was always kinder to those movies. But to answer your question fully, yes, it is. Because even as a child, I understood this is building towards Darth Vader. This is building towards Luke Skywalker. Like, I loved this stuff. I think what happens is you're trying to sell something to a generation of people who have too many options. Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, Spider-Man, all were out at the same time as the Star Wars prequels. What you have is a generation of people who have grown up that are now having kids, and of course they're going to introduce them to some Star Wars, but Star Wars had so much competition for such a long time. I grew up in the 90s, right before the special editions dropped, and Star Wars was this new thing that an older generation was into, and I thought it was cool because everybody seemed excited about it, and I got into it. It was like part of the culture still. It has been watered down because of there's so much competition and so much bad Star Wars that I don't think that really applies to today's world. But
I understand what you're saying about the competition that's out there, but in all honesty, if Disney took Star Wars and just excelled to heights that we haven't seen, like, honestly, if they had have just adapted a lot of the EU and just told those stories and did them justice,
that'd be great.
They'd be making money hand over fist. It'd be rolling in. They'd be printing money out of it.
But the one thing they have to take into account is the Craigs of the world who are, I watched the movie once, I'm aware of certain things. Like, I don't like what they've done, but by trying to broaden the appeal, they've only pushed away the core that is huge. Like, Star Wars has a core audience that's millions of people. If you're turning off half of them, that's a lot of people to not come back.
Yeah.
I want to dig back into this statement though. And I feel like this is one of the things that we see in entertainment in particular when there's any sort of criticism is they use their sexuality, they use their race as a shield, right? And that's kind of what's happening here. Says, I think Leslie has struggled with it a bit. I think a lot of women who step into Star Wars struggle with this a bit more. I think you could say, I think anybody who steps into Star Wars is going to struggle with it because people are going to be critical of something that they love. It doesn't matter if they're woman, white, black, gay, straight, whatever, right? The idea that they're stepping into something that people are so passionate about that they want to see successful, there's going to be criticism, right? And the idea that like they're admitting because the fan base is so male dominated, then why don't you just embrace that? Why are we trying?
Yeah, this is the thing, though, Craig, is I don't buy it. I don't buy it because this is the thing. As a Star Wars fan, I've been a Star Wars fan for a damn long time, right? As a Star Wars fan and a white, straight male Star Wars fan, if a girl or a woman has ever said to me, "Oh, I love Star Wars," it's never ever occurred to me to say like, "No, you're not." Or like anything like that. In fact, it's been more like, no shit, because it's so rare that you come across a female Star Wars fan that it's like, oh shit, what's your favorite this? Or what's your favorite movie? Or
exactly.
The conversation just takes off. I don't understand where this narrative comes from, where it's so patriarchal that the fans have always been like so bigoted towards.
It's led by women. Every movie. Here's the thing, though, real quick, and I'll leave it to you guys. Every movie, the women are the leaders. Princess Leia had oversight over everybody. General Leia, that's fine by Return of the Jedi. What's her face? Mon Mothma. Padme had control. No one ever complained that the men were the soldiers or the Jedi and the women were the politicians or they could fight or could fly. It's like Star Wars had it covered, but then you get the people that think we're going to sell it to a modern audience by making it like this. It was already like that. That's like saying the WWE needs diversity when all of their stars for the last 40 years have been multiracial or this or that. Don't get me started on trying to fix the past.
But also now it's being pushed even harder. When you watch something like the Ahsoka series, every leader other than Thrawn, every leader, every person, it's this strong female character now. But it's so in your face that it takes you out of it, right?
They're not
it's like
cool
when
characters.
you watched Leia or when you watched Padme or when you saw Mon Mothma or when you saw these characters, they were quote unquote strong female characters, but it was never so in your face that you were like, oh, look, I see what they're doing. right? Whereas now it's exactly like that. Look, it's another female boss lady talking down to her male underling. You know, that is where the entertainment has gone. And it's kind of like sorry, can you bring that quote up again really quickly?
Sure.
It's the first part of it. It just mentions, where is it? Be representative of all people, right? That right now is what's more important in entertainment than telling an actual story, with the right people there to direct it, the right people there to write it, you know, the people that understand the laws within these universes that have actually been established and created.
And they could fix it if they just made everybody aliens. They didn't focus on sexuality, and they told an epic story of good versus evil that humans can relate to on a deeper level.